Hello, my name is Shannon Stewart. I'm from the Education Department at the Cleveland History Center. Thanks for joining us today for a Cleveland History Explorer video. We're actually going to be talking about a story from way, way long ago, before there was a Cleveland. And we're looking at when our area was named the Connecticut Western Reserve. We're going to be looking at the story of the map makers who came here to the Western Reserve and actually founded the city of Cleveland in 1796 and what they went through to get here. As I mentioned, our story starts a long time ago. We're going to look at 1662 with this man, King Charles II. He was the English king, and the colony of Connecticut actually asked him to extend their borders. They wanted to own more land. So he made their charter go from sea to sea, or extended it out west. So here you see everything with those black lines as land that Connecticut claimed. Now, after the American Revolution, Connecticut and many other colonies gave up their claims to these western lands. But Connecticut did reserve some of their western land. So if you look at that first red block, that's Connecticut State. If you were to take your fingers to the top and bottom, their northern and southern boundaries, and you dragged it out across the map, right where those thick black lines are, as you come to the state of Ohio, that second block, that is the Western Reserve. So those are the lands they reserved from their original charter. Now, in 1795, they decided to sell off most of that land to the Connecticut Land Company. Now, one of the first directors of that land company was General Moses Cleaveland. Moses was elected to lead the surveying party here to the Western Reserve. When I say survey, it means to look at something carefully and gather information. So we want to look at something and learn from it. So Moses is going to come out to the Western Reserve to survey the lands, to look at them, to map them, and to measure them, most importantly, and to gather information. So Moses leads his group out to the Western Reserve, about 46 people. They leave in the spring of 1796, and they're going to travel over 500 miles to get here. This is a modern day Google map, but it shows us that if we were to walk straight from Connecticut to Cleveland, it'd be about 516 miles and take us 172 hours without stopping. Now, Moses's group, they were going to mostly walk. They did have horses they could ride, but of course there's no trains or planes at this time. They also know they need to bring most of the goods that they want with them. While they'll be able to hunt or gather some food on the way, most of the supplies they need to pack with them. So that means they're going to be bringing big covered wagons and carts pulled by mules. But as they travel over this 500 miles, they're going to cross about 180 streams, about 30 creeks, and at least 5 major rivers. And as they cross the water, they would actually have to unpack their wagons, either carry all the goods across water or end up making a raft and floating the goods across water, and then repack everything on the other side. This is a lot of work, over 180 creeks, so they're going to have to unpack and repack each time. That meant that they knew while they needed to bring a lot of supplies, they had to be really careful with how much they packed. This also meant they had to learn how to work as a team pretty quickly in order to get everything safely across the water. As they were traveling, they were going to meet with different Native American groups. And Moses knew that he needed to meet, especially in the state of New York, around Buffalo. They were going to meet with the Six Nations leaders. So those are Iroquois peoples, one of the native tribes or native groups that was here in the area. And General Moses meets with this man, Joseph Brant, also known as Thanendaega. He was a sachem or chief of one of the Iroquois nations. And Moses is going to talk to these gentlemen about having a safe journey into the Ohio country and into Cleveland. In order to do that, they're actually going to exchange goods to make agreements. And the Native American leaders will agree that Moses Cleaveland and his surveying party and the settlers that will follow them can stay on the east bank of the Cuyahoga River. And we'll see in the maps what that looks like. Now, as they arrived by the Cuyahoga, the mouth of the Cuyahoga, so where the river meets the lake, Moses Cleaveland looked around, and in July of 1796, he decided that that looked like a great place for his new capital city. So he thought it was going to be the capital of New Connecticut, or the Western Reserve. And they founded Cleveland City. So he kept his name until today, but we did drop one of the extra A's from his name. The first thing they do is they set up their headquarters for surveying, and they map out a town square, which you see pictured here. Today we call it Public Square, but this was really familiar to the map makers because their towns and homes in Connecticut and New England all had a public square or town square similar to this. This is also the first map ever made of Cleveland. It was made by Seth Pease, who was one of the main map makers in the group. Now, once they had their headquarters, they were going to get to work. And in order to measure the area, they used a surveying tool called a Gunter's chain. Now, this chain here is folded up, but when they stretched it out, it would be about 66 feet long. And in order to measure the area, they would actually stretch this chain out. Someone would actually walk it out a straight 66 feet, mark it, and then do it again. And they would repeat this over and over. So this is some really hard work. If you take a minute and think about what this group has been through, they had this really hard journey out here, about 500 miles. They packing and unpacking their wagon the whole time. They get here and they have to get straight to work. There's not a lot of time to rest. They're doing all this hard manual labor. They are getting sick often because this ends up being a very swampy area in the beginning here in Cleveland, which means there's lots of mosquitoes, and mosquitoes carry diseases. And they also were running out of supplies. They're running out of food and running out of medicine. So the workers are tired and they're cranky. They start fighting with each other, and then they decide to strike, which means they won't work anymore until they're able to come up with a different compromise. So General Moses Cleaveland really had to work with the group to get them to all work together as a team again. Luckily, he was able to do that, and they were able to finish their work. They ended up making several very detailed maps of the area. This is a map made by Seth Pease. This is actually a map that he'll make after the journey on a second visit to the area, but it shows you what they were trying to accomplish. First, notice that all of the writing, all the colored blocks, all the townships and blocks are all on the east bank of the Cuyahoga. So thinking back to that promise that they made to the Iroquois nations. And they're actually trying to eventually divide up all of that land into townships and lots. And then they'll be able to sell this up to other people to come start their own farms and businesses and homesteads here in the Western Reserve. Now, after all this time, the group is excited to get home, and most of the original group returns to Connecticut in October of 1796. And that includes Moses Cleaveland. He actually never returns to the Western Reserve and to the city that bears his name again. So he never visits Cleveland later on. But we do have this statue of Moses downtown in Public Square, that square that he helped to lay out. And we still talk about his journey and his map makers here to the Western Reserve. Now, if you have a chance to come visit the Cleveland History Center soon, I hope you'll be able to look at our Cleveland Starts Here interactive exhibit. It's going to give you a little bit more information about Moses Cleaveland, and you can explore his story a little bit more and see some of the original artifacts that we talked about today as well. But there are lots of ways to engage with Moses Cleaveland's story in your own home and to look at this history a little bit deeper. Attached, we have a couple different activities for you. I have a Pack Your Wagon worksheet attached with you that gives you instructions on how to use it. It also gives you some cards that you can print out, or you can use them as an example and make up your own cards like I did. I just used scrap paper and cut it up. The cards have 14 different objects that you're going to choose from to pack your wagon. Each of the objects has a number attached to it. So this is extra clothing, and it's worth 1 point. Now, I put my numbers on the back of my cards to make it a little bit more challenging. The printable worksheet has the numbers on the front, but you can do whatever works best for you. As part of the instructions, you'll see that you have a minimum list of things that you're going to pack with you first. So things that are already in the wagon, your bare essentials. You're going to pick 6 of the 14 items that you're given, add up your points, and in those instructions, you'll be able to see how well you did. If your points are too low, you didn't pack enough essentials, and you might be stopping on your journey. If you have too many points, you packed too much stuff, and maybe you're going to lose a wagon in one of those streams. So try your hand and pack your wagon first, and then we suggest working out mapping in your home. This is a great activity that's good for all ages. You can make it as hard or as easy as you'd like to, but you want to make sure that you do get the 5 essential elements of a map on your map. So you want the title. So what is the map about? Get your publisher, so who is making the map, who's the author, your date when the map is made, and then you want your map key. The map key is going to help you kind of learn how to use your map. For instance, I have this little image here on my map. I have some of my rooms drawn out. And this image here, when I look at my map key, it tells me I have the same image that tells me that's my front door. So it lets me know how to use my map. If you want to make it a little bit harder, you could also make a treasure map. Team up with somebody in your family, have one person make the map, and you can either just use directions. So you make sure you have your compass rose on your map, and you can tell the person to go north, south, east, or west along your map to find something. Or you can leave them clues in your objects. So here I have a little kitty cat face. And in my map key, instead of saying what that is, what that symbol represents, I say find Red's favorite place. Red is my cat. So if this map was made for me, I would look at this area and I know I would have to figure out what is my cat's favorite place. And then maybe when I go there, I'd find another clue or something like that. So you can practice map making. You can use your directions and learn the different directions in your home. If you have a compass, you can find north and map out your house. If you're feeling really adventurous, you and your family can take this outside, maybe try to map your street or your neighborhood as well. The last part of Moses' journey that we want to talk about is probably the most important part, is the team building that they had to go through. So while you're home with your family, there's a lot of different team building exercises that you can try out. I recommend if you have puzzles, try building a puzzle together, especially if you set a time limit. It means that you have to all work together very quickly to accomplish something. You can also make an obstacle course, which is a lot of fun to do. Remember, students, to ask your parents and guardians before you start using things as an obstacle course. But try to think of the surveyors and how they had to cross the water, getting all their goods across. So you can kind of make up an obstacle course of the different streams and rivers that you might have to cross and carry all those packed items across too. Lastly, thinking about the idea of compromise and negotiation that Moses Cleaveland had to be so good at. So the next time that you're angry or you see someone in your family angry, think about how you can learn to listen and talk together to make a compromise. Try to negotiate a better outcome for your family as well. Well, that's all the time that we have. I'm glad that you joined us today. I hope you enjoyed our story of Moses Cleaveland, and you can try out some of our map making and pack your wagon games, our team building suggestions at home. And there's additional resources linked on our resource page for you to join with us again as well. So thank you, and until we can see you again at the Cleveland History Center, we'll look forward to sending out more Cleveland History Explorer videos, and stay safe and healthy at home.